One thing we've got right now is lots of time. Man, crazy amounts of time. I don't know what you're doing with yours. And to be honest, there's lots of days that I don't feel like I really don't know what I'm doing with mine. But man, we've been given lots of it. Not by choice, we just have it now. So what do we do with it? So for me, I've been doing lots of thinking and lots of pondering about stuff that happened in my life and where I can see if God might have been doing something or not. And there was a season, that's about 4 years old, a crazy season where my life was totally in chaos, total turmoil, and not having control of anything. And it's so hard for a control freak. And for those that know me, I would probably say in some ways I'm a control freak. Confession time, I'll confess to that. Yeah, in that season, I just didn't have control of anything. Man, stuff was just going crazy. Stuff was everywhere. My life was turned upside down and I didn't even really know who I was anymore. It was insane. And lots of stuff was going on that I kind of had no sense of what was really going on. Couldn't make sense of I had lots of why questions for God that he wasn't answering. And it was tough. It was tough. And so now I'm kind of looking back there and seeing what God was actually up to, and I'm seeing some stuff that God was doing in me that I didn't see or appreciate in the moment when he was doing it. Stopping and looking back at something and kind of thinking about it and trying to process and see what was going on, and even if God could have been doing something crazy in your life, it's a thing called perspective. It's a thing called perspective. We need more of it. I need more of it. So I don't know how it is for you when God does something in your life, if it's in those moments where things are really going well for you and you're on top of stuff spiritually, you think, and you're on top of your prayer life and stuff, and you're really into the Bible and things, and you're just on top of the whole game, and then God just does some amazing things in your life that just helps you to grow. Well, man, I wish that was my story, and it kind of never really has been. Those crazy moments, maybe you've had them. If you haven't had them, then hey, welcome to one. Seems like we're kind of in one, doesn't it? Not being able to control and not know. It's kind of where we're at. And you know what moments like that are also kind of called? They're called God being God and you not being God. That's where we're at. Perspective, looking back to see, could God have been doing something crazy in that crazy moment, or did I just miss it? Yeah. Lots of stuff to think on for sure there. Because I can honestly say, more often than not, the times when I'm going to learn something brand new about Jesus and brand new about the way that Jesus does his work in my life is going to come from crazy times. Moments where I kind of got some fear going on. Moments where I got some anxiety happening, moments where there's some panic and stuff. And lots of times we say to people, you shouldn't be afraid, you should never be afraid, but hey, it's an emotion, and it's gonna get the best of us sometimes. It's gonna be there. It's gonna travel along with us. It's what we do with it. It's the thing, right? I heard it said just this week that it's not that you can never let fear get in the car. It's just that you can never let it get in the driver's seat. Boy, that's true. That's true. And now as I kind of look back at that crazy season of my life, as I look at the car of my life, there was fear in the car. Fear wasn't driving. I didn't let it drive. There was definitely lots of anxiety in the car of my life too. It was there. But it wasn't driving. It wasn't in control. There was moments of panic. Yeah, for sure. When you kind of don't know what's going on, stuff is crazy. Yeah, sometimes you panic, and it was there. But probably in the back seat, it wasn't driving. But 4 years later now, as I look back and I kind of look at what was going on, think about what was going on in my life, in the car of my life, in that sense, man, I'll tell you what was driving. It was exhaustion. Exhaustion was driving. When I lost control of everything, I just got exhausted. And it happened in a crazy way. Exhaustion. And it wasn't like physical exhaustion, but it was like spiritual exhaustion. I felt in the midst of the craziness, no matter what I did, that God wasn't listening to me, that the distance was massive. It's kind of what I felt like. And it caused me to kind of not want to press into God. I was definitely mentally exhausted. I could not process. I could not think. My best thoughts could not get me out of the situation that was going on around me. It just wasn't happening. It wasn't working, no matter what I did. And I was emotionally exhausted. Seemed like, I experienced all the different emotions. I was a mess. And I couldn't even really be helpful to the people closest to me. I was totally exhausted in every way there was to be, I think. And man, and now when I look back into that car of my life, exhaustion was in the driver's seat. Not only was it in the driver's seat, but man, it was buckled in and the gas pedal was to the floor. And I don't know if you've ever dealt with that before. Maybe you have. I know for sure I did. Totally feeling like, I don't know what's going on here. I'm so tired. And thankfully now I can look back and know that even in the midst of my exhaustion on all levels, God was present. God was there. Especially when I didn't see it. It's kind of the way He does it. So I remember being right in this crazy moment in my life where I kind of had no control. And I was trying to find Jesus in everything. Man, I was trying. I would spend so much time just trying to find God, just trying to connect, trying to get into the Bible to find out what the Bible was saying, trying to find ways to pray and stuff. And it was just, I remember day after day in this dark, lonely, cold basement, just trying to pray, to ask Jesus to help me, to bail me out of this crazy moment that I was in. And I couldn't pray even. The fear that was in the car, even though it wasn't really driving, or I didn't feel it was, man, it was stopping me from praying. And the exhaustion that was clearly in the driver's seat, I was just so wiped out spiritually. I just didn't have what it took, or I thought, to pray in a way where God would actually hear what I was saying. If I ever felt that I was far from God, I felt like I was far from God in those moments. And the thing was, I was trying. I was trying to hear from Jesus. I was trying to hear from God. I was trying to do it all. I was trying, but the fear and the exhaustion just would not let me see clearly what God was doing around me. I just couldn't see it. Maybe that's where you're at. Maybe in the midst of the crazy thing we're all dealing with these days, or just something else in your life. Maybe that's where you're at. Just the fear and the exhaustion, those pieces, you just don't feel, even though you're trying, you just don't feel that you're there yet. And maybe it's going to take some time for you to even see what God's doing in your life. But take a crazy bet and say that He's probably doing something that you can't see. Lately around here, we've been talking about distance, right? And as much as right now as some of the distance pieces are really hurting many of us, we're feeling lonely. I can say that the time that I'm kind of thinking about and processing was one of the loneliest times I've ever felt in my life. When I felt like it didn't matter how much I prayed or how much I tried to connect with Jesus, I just couldn't close that gap. I just didn't feel like I was able to just kind of make it work. I didn't feel like I could make that connection. I couldn't feel Jesus doing something. I couldn't hear Jesus doing something. I couldn't sense that He was even anywhere close. All I could sense was the fear and the exhaustion that we're in the driver's seat. I didn't have a sense, no concept that Jesus was anywhere close. Maybe you're having similar kinds of feelings these days that you just can't close that gap. Fear and exhaustion kind of have this way, right? That they don't stop God from coming to you. Jesus is as close to you right now as your next breath, but they sometimes stop you from feeling him being close to you, sensing how close God is to you. Sometimes they cloud your judgment. You kind of don't really get a sense of what God is doing around you, in you, through you right now. And sometimes you can't even hear the invitations that Jesus gives to you in crazy moments like this. Because there's just so much stuff going on, it clouds your hearing. You just can't sense, but Jesus is still inviting you to come to him. Still trying to close that distance, close that gap. Jesus does not want fear or panic or anxiety or exhaustion in the driver's seat of the car of your life. He wants in the driver's seat. And he's calling us to it today. Calling us to it right now. And so we want to close that distance, and Jesus is close to you, friends. And he was close to me in moments like I was in. Boy, closer than I ever could have imagined. And he's closer to you than you imagine right now too. So what I want to do for a moment, I want you to do a swap out. I want you to do a swap out. I want you to pull the car of your life over for a minute, and whatever's in the front seat, if it's not Jesus, I want you to let it out. If it's fear or exhaustion or panic or anxiety, I want you to let it out. Take the seatbelt off, let it out. And I want you, through this passage of Scripture, to let Jesus in. I'm going to read this verse. This is a powerful verse today. And I want you, for the next little bit, to let these verses do the steering for a little while. I want you to let these verses do the steering of the car of your life for the next few weeks and months. It'll take you in the right direction. It'll open your senses to actually hear what God is saying to you. Are you ready for it? I got this verse through perspective. So now let me give it to you in the middle of whatever it is you're dealing with. Here it comes. It's for you right now. I love these words of Jesus. Man, do we ever need them. Matthew chapter 11, Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are tired and burdened. I will give you rest. Take my load upon you and learn from me, because I'm gentle and humble in heart. And when you do that," he says, "you will find rest for your souls. For my load is easy. My burden is light." So that whole invitation, right? Come to me, all you who are tired, carrying heavy burdens. I would suspect that's many of you today. No matter what's going on in your life today that you expected or did not expect, that invitation stands for you. It's a simple invitation. Come to me, especially when you're tired, burdened, and exhausted. When I was coming to Jesus in those days when I was tired and burdened and exhausted, I thought he wasn't close, and he was. I thought it leaned on my ability to connect, and it didn't. It was on him. He drew close in the midst of my tiredness and my heavy load, and he'll do the same to you. Come to me, he says. All you who are weary and burdened, I'll give you rest. I love that. So coming to him, just come to him. Just know he's there. Even when you don't feel it, he's there. He's closing the gap. It's what he does. It's what he does, friends. It's what he does. It's who he is. You know, in the midst of this whole Jesus invitation, right? I love it. It says, come to me, and I love that piece. If you're tired and you're burdened, you know, that's an amazing promise. I'll give you rest. Oh, Jesus, do we ever need the rest? Some of us need to let our minds rest today. Some of us need to let our spirits rest. Our emotions need to rest. We need to come to Jesus. We need to come to you today, God, and find rest, because we're weary for sure and burdened. But God, there's this peace in there Friends, there's a piece in here that I kind of don't know how much we process it. And it's a line that just kind of drove in my spirit as I kind of reflected on 4 years ago for me. The question is, what did I learn from him as I came to him in those days? As I come to him right now? The line's in here. Take a look at it. Come to me, he says, if you're tired and weary, and I'll give you rest. Learn from me. Learn from me, he says. I don't know. An interesting question that I got to ask myself these days. That I ask myself as I look back at my situation 4 years ago. And as I look at my situations right now. What am I learning from him? This invitation to come, to bring all my exhaustion to him, it's a legit invitation. Take it. Take it today. But also take the invitation to learn from him. If you stopped in the midst of the crazy season that you're in and asked yourself, what am I learning from God? What am I learning from Jesus? Because I got a funny, sneaky suspicion that in the midst of a crazy season that we're all in, he is trying to teach us something. Are you listening? Are you listening? What is it he's trying to say to you? What is it he's trying to teach you? So what are you going to learn from him in these days, friends? I know one thing that I've learned from him in moments like this, just when stuff is crazy and there's no control, I learned that Jesus can change our situation in a moment. One moment. Any situation. Nothing is too hard for him. In my moment, in my crazy piece a few years back, it was one telephone call. One unexpected telephone call that came right out of nowhere that Jesus used to put my life back on track. That Jesus used to put my family's life back on track. One phone call, one moment in time that Jesus used in the midst of what was a very dark, painful series of moments for us. Jesus changed it. One moment in time. It's one thing I learned from him. Today, what is it that you can learn from him? In my moment, when fear and exhaustion were in the car, exhaustion was clearly driving, and I was along for the ride, Jesus stepped in one instant and turned that whole thing around. He's amazing. He can do that in situations like this. I learned from Jesus back in those days. As I look back now, I know that I can never let anything else drive my car. Only Jesus. So I need to come to him. You need to come to him. If you're weary and tired and burdened, he will give you rest. Take his load and learn from him. One thing today I've learned from Jesus is that lots of times I take crazy stuff going on in my life that are passing and I make them permanent. They happen for a season and I think they're going to last forever. Those seasons in that basement, I thought I was there forever. I thought I was banished from the will of God for my life forever. One moment, Jesus says, no way, I'm driving your car. I'm in the front seat, let's go. Jesus says to us in these days, rest in him. Come to him. Close that distance from you. Rest in him. He's got this. He's got you. Come to him and learn from him. Yeah, it's been in the midst of some crazy stuff in my life where I've learned how Jesus works. At least got some sense of how he does work in my life. There's a song that really just hits me over and over these days. It just got this line in it, it says, even when I don't feel it, you're working. These days, whatever your situation is where you don't feel it, God's working. As we draw in, as we come to him in our weariness and in our tiredness and in all the things that burden us down, we learn from him, he's working. He's doing something. Close that distance today. Bring your wearied soul to him. And know that he's working. I look back now, after that storm in my life has passed, and guess what now? Yeah, you figured it. I'm in another one. And so are you. But I know from the last time that when I come to him and bring my exhaustion and my fear to him, that he will give me rest. Rest for my soul. I might not feel it in the moment, but I believe he's doing it because I've been there before. And Jesus says, are you tired? Worn out? Come to me, he says. Walk with me. Work with me. Watch how I do it, he says. Learn from me, he says to us. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. And you'll find rest. Rest for your soul.